Welcome, everybody, to Aruba. Here we are, the islands. Not really. We're still somewhere in Pittsburgh, but you are connected to Astrology Unplugged. My name is Rick DiClemente, and welcome aboard tonight. We're going back and forth to different things, and tonight we're going to go back to pure astrology, and I'm going to show you a little bit of a trick I learned a long time ago, and it'll really help you. And helps you to understand Uranus cycles, helps you to understand any cycle. You see, because the zodiac itself is more than just 12 houses and 12 signs. And tonight we're going to use this particular zodiac. I've done this before. This lecture is the top lecture, number 1 on my YouTube page. It's from 10 years ago. Tonight is a repeat of that and any new insights, because I think sometimes it's really good to repeat some things. But anyhow, we'll be using this diagram tonight, and we're using the zodiac as a tool for what happens when you're 0 years old, what happens when you're 7, when you're 14, when you're 21, when you're 42, mainly the 21-year cycles. The opening square at age 21, the opposition of age 42, which is most of us get it around age 42. That's the midlife crisis. And then the third one, which comes at age 63. So let's talk a little bit about Uranus first. Uranus is a major planet in your chart, and the reason it's so nice to talk about, it's rather circular in its orbit. It's not like the Earth, it's not like Pluto, it's not like Eris. It has regular 7 years per sign. 7 years per sign, 7 years per sign, 21 years per quadrant. Now, when we talk about Uranus, you're going to be going, aha, all night. Think about the people who are 19, 20, 21, 22. Think about the people that are 39, 40, 41, 42. Think about the people that are multiples of 21. Now, you'll see how this planet works. This is a very major force inside of ourselves that insists on us being ourselves. This is the planet that wants us to be our unique self. And it comes in peaks every 21 years. It peaks every 7 years in a different way, but it really peaks big time at 21, at 42, and at 63. And you'll notice that's why people have 3 really big events in their life astrologically. They have the age 21, liberation of Uranus. They have the age 28, when Saturn goes around and completes itself during the Saturn cycle. And another really big one is when we're at age 42 with the midlife crisis, which is what they unfortunately call it. So we're going to talk about those. So when you're little, Uranus is working within you and is going through the first 7 years. This is one reason you hear so much about 7-year crises. It's not just Saturn we're talking about Uranus also. But when Uranus gets to 21, what happens is Uranus starts to square where it started from the bottom of the chart. Now, remember, this has nothing to do with your natal chart. This has nothing to do with your rising sign. I'm using the zodiac as a way of cutting the pie up into 12 pieces. And Uranus works in a big way every 3 pieces. So after 21 years, you're born, you're 7, you're 14. When you're 21, when you're 20, when you're 22, it goes back and forth. Uranus is said to be squaring itself from the opening square. There's the closing square up there. The opening square is right here. So when Uranus hits from the bottom of the chart, this shows you how valid astrology is and how exquisite the zodiac is. I can no longer point behind me because my book got lost underwater. Okay. When Uranus squares itself from age 21, or when anything squares itself from its opening square, that's the fourth house. Okay? The beginning and then the opening. Now, Uranus does what? It's a rebellious planet. On the good side, it's good rebellious. On the bad side, it's bad rebellious. It's just rebel without a cause, causing trouble, being disruptive. On the good side, makes you want to break free. Now, Chuck, we've talked a lot about Uranus is hitting your planets, and with all your Leo stuff, your Uranus is hitting all your Leo stuff from the solar midheaven. So that's why all the Uranus stuff is hitting you from what's apparently job and career, because it's coming to you from the top of all that. So that's different than what we're talking about tonight. So when Uranus gets to the fourth house, this is why it's normal to want to break free of the family, to break free of any imagined or real family constraints. Now, if you've had a tough time with mom and dad, if they've had a lot of fighting going on, if they've been restricting you, or if you think they've been restricting you, you're in for trouble. You're in for a real radical break free. But if you all think back to your age 21, the age of drinking, the age of driving in some states, the age of voting, heaven forbid. Well, it used to be anyway, back when you could vote. Okay, anyhow. What happens is the soul, the entity that is growing, gets to a point where it goes through its first 21 years and it is benefiting from the fourth house. It is benefiting from support from the family. It's benefiting from identity with the family. It's benefiting from protection from within the family. But when it gets to the square, Uranus is now talking directly to itself. And that's why orb is so important in astrology. When a planet is hitting another planet directly, closely, it's a big deal. It's a huge explosion. That's why oftentimes, now Uranus is second nature. Uranus always acts suddenly. It always takes you somewhere weird, and it always changes your life overnight. Suddenly, overnight change. That's why think about when you were 21. Think about other people you know that were 21. They're around age 21. Think about things like businesses that are in the 21st year, baseball clubs, etc. So the key here is it's coming from the bottom of the chart. When it's coming from the top, it's totally different. When it's coming from the bottom, it's coming from the solar fourth house. So the zodiac is used like a prism. So we see here at age 21, almost everybody has Uranus in this area. Now, Uranus does several things. It makes you break away. It makes you break away suddenly. It puts you on weird little islands like I'm on tonight. Uranus is real famous for taking you places that are unusual, not Rome and Paris and London, but Timbuktu places, just weird places off the wall, because that's just how Uranus works. Uranus is in great bedfellow with strange things, surprising things, weird things, because Uranus loves the weirder the better. So this is why you'll see your teenagers explode at age 21. It's why they will seem to be really much more rebellious than usual. It's this power that's in them, and it's been coming a long time. It's been coming. They've been feeling it. You've been hearing it in their words a little bit. You've been hearing it in their words a little bit. But when it gets close, boom, they got to go. Now, the worst thing you could do during Uranus time is to try to suppress it. It's really dangerous planet when you try to suppress it. Okay. This is why Uranus, which rules the parts of the body between the knee and the foot, Uranus is about the calf muscles, about the ankles, and Uranus, strangely, is also the ruler of circulation. This is why when you have Uranus hitting something closely, you may have problems in that area. It's very common. Ankle sprains, broken ankles, broken bones in the lower leg. Now, what that has to do with, it's weird how astrology works medically, is, the big parts of your leg that keep you moving forward are your lower leg and your upper leg and your hip. Well, in astrology, that's the Jupiter part, that's the upper leg, that's the kneecap, which is Saturn, that's the Uranus, which is the lower leg. But the main point about Uranus at age 21, the identity needs to discover their independence. They need to break away from mama and dad and from the nest. And if they do not do that, then what they set themselves up for, if you do not break free because of fear, trepidation, being chicken, being overprotective, whatever, if you do not do this in a healthy manner, you don't have to get it all right at age 21. You might break through at 21 and get a little weird, have some craziness at age 22 and fall down and bruise yourself at 23. But eventually at 24, 25, you're on your own. You're finally getting to your feet as an independent soul. Then you've conquered it. You don't have to conquer it right at 21. But the point is, if you don't get the breakthrough at 21, then what do you think is going to happen to you at 42? What do you think is going to happen when Uranus is opposite itself at age 42? And when it's opposite itself, it's always got to do with your relationships. We're going to get in the midlife crisis, which we'll get next year. We'll get to that next. So there's this tremendous explosion that happens, and I cannot tell you this clearly enough. You cannot control Uranian energy. The other planets you can't control either, but Uranus is really dominant like this. Uranus is a very forceful, powerful, electrical energy. And I exaggerate on purpose because I want you to get the feeling what I'm trying to say to you. And I use this ridiculous, I'm going to use it again, this ridiculous example to show you how weird Uranus is. So you all know Mrs. Cleaver, Beaver and Wally's mother. And she always came down the steps. She always had her little pearls on. She actually had her pearls on because she had a tracheotomy and she was actually covering that over. But she always had her pearls on. And she was a traditional 1950s, 1960 mother. What's up, Wally? What's up, Ward? What's up? How's the beaver? Okay. Well, I'm using this on purpose as an explanation, as an example, that at age 21 or 21 years of marriage, she comes downstairs and she's got her shades on and she's playing a saxophone and she's letting it out. I mean, that's how shocking Uranus can be. And the people around will say, what the hell got into you? So it's not anything weird to her. Because as Uranus is getting to 18 years, getting to 19 years, getting to 20 years, getting to 21, you feel it. You feel these things coming, just like Chuck, we've talked about with you. I kept telling you these things were coming. All these Uranus squares you got, I kept telling you they're coming, they're coming, they're coming. And I told you now they're here. Okay, well, Mrs. Cleaver comes downstairs and she's not new to the saxophone. She's been upstairs blowing that thing into a pillow for years. She's just not been ready to bring it public. So all of a sudden she blows it out public. And here she is. She's ready to come out. She comes down the steps and she's boogieing, with the saxophone. Now, this is symbolic in the sense that Uranus makes it's common that something weird comes out of you, but it's not weird. It's just a part that's been baking. It's been baking and it's not ready to come out. And when it does come out, you see this whole new side of the person. That's why Uranus is so wild. And the typical all-time movie for Uranus transits is James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause, and all of his aches and pains of going through the late 18, late 19, late age 20, etc. So what happens is not all of you are going to come downstairs and start playing saxophone, but what happens is long repressed parts of you come out. Now, recently, in the past 2-3 years, when we were all COVID locked up, I've been playing guitar since I was 21. I'm real average at it, but I've been playing. I don't write any songs. I just strum a lot of songs I've ever heard. And the guys get together and we play together, and it's a lot of fun and it's pleasant. Well, I looked into the zodiac because I kept feeling something. And after 21 years of having this guitar, Uranus hit me. Uranus squared itself in terms of 21 years after getting this guitar. I got the guitar all fixed up. I got the frets all done, the sanding of the fretboard down. I put all my old songs away, and I got this fever to start writing my own songs. And during the COVID times, I wrote 8 new songs. They're little things, they're no big deal. But they're a big deal to me. I'd never written a song before. I knew the words were coming out, the chords were coming out. And that was because the Uranus was unveiling something that had been long kept suppressed. So another thing that you got to imagine here, and you got to get your handle on, I don't care if it's what age it is, if it's Uranus, is going to bust out. Now, the more repressed you are, the more trouble you're going to have. My father was an old Italian man. He was very repressed. He had no idea at all what it meant to do what he wanted to do my thing. He had no idea. And my wife and I at the time, she was into astrology for many years. We saw Uranus coming up to Capricorn. We saw it coming into Capricorn. We watched for years as it was approaching Capricorn. And his sun was at like 2 degrees Capricorn. So when you sit real close to the border, what do you think is going to happen when the door opens violently? So he had a stroke. Within a couple of days, he had an aneurysm. He had his health fall apart. He was dead within 7 years from it. And the reason why is not because Uranus said, hey, let's get this guy, he's vulnerable, but because he had lived a life not in touch with his Uranian energy. He was not in touch with, hey, I'd like to go do this, and I go do it. In his Catholic upbringing from Italy, you didn't do things like that. Those impulses were squashed. And I guarantee you at age 21, he had some kind of minor revolution, but it wasn't that big. So later in life, when Uranus, by another means of moving, when Uranus moved into his sun sign and went over his sun, it just about killed him. It eventually did. Why? Because your insides, I cannot take messages right now. I'm sorry. I will read them later on. I just can't concentrate on them. When Uranus, the Aquarian planet, hits you, if you've been pretty loose. I'm not talking loosey-goosey, but if you've wanted to do something, you've gone and done it, and you're pretty comfortable with your independence, you won't have much trouble with Uranus. If, however, you've been clinging to mama, clinging to dad, clinging to the cabin, clinging to the house, clinging to your rituals, clinging to all your codependency, you're in trouble when this planet hits. Not because the planet is out there and it wants to get you. That does not exist because the Uranus is inside of you wants out. And when it's on you, it's very common for clients to use these words with me. I'm beside myself. I don't know what the hell's going on. I'm coming out of my skin. So they say, I'm coming out of my skin. I'm coming out of my skin. You literally go to bed with your plug in the 110 and you wake up and your plug is in the 440. Not 220, 440. When it's really close, it's intense. So what do? Number one, you prepare for this planet long before it gets there by identifying blockages, identifying are there times when you block yourself. Oh, I think I'll go on a trip with my friends. Oh, no, I can't go there. I can't do that. We can't do that. Girls don't do that. Guys don't do that. If you got all these rules that repress you, you'd better make some progress with those rules before this planet gets there, because this planet is insistent. And the reason it's insistent, it's just simply you, what's out. Now, the more repressed you are, the more weird the outcome will be, such as Mrs. Cleaver playing saxophone. If you're somebody who's been liberated all along, you just unfold a new leaf. You try this kind of art, try this kind of dance, try this kind of singing, try karaoke, and people don't think much of it. It's just another method of self-expression. So in the zodiac, you see, in the exquisite zodiac that is so smart, it knows what it's doing. And part of the success of the zodiac is the Uranian or the Aquarian part of the zodiac, symbolized by Uranus. Uranus wants you to do your thing. Now, how many of you raise your hand if you're doing your thing, but it's not been easy for you? Okay. How many of you are doing your thing and it's not too bad? That's a very good sign. So if you're having trouble, go line up where Uranus is in your chart. Because remember, we're talking about two different things. We're talking mainly tonight about Uranus related to its own origin. Where did it start? Where is it? Versus Uranus in your natal chart. Uranus in your natal chart might be here, might be be going over here, opposing this, squaring that, whatever. So you're going to want to look up, where is Uranus? In other words, are you close to 21? Are you close to 42? Are you close to 63? In the natal chart, you want to look and see, is Uranus hitting something? With where Uranus is now, is it going over something? Is it squaring something? Then you just combine the natures of the two planets to get the desired translation. Now, when people, I know, people don't like me to warn them because they get scared or they think they're non-believers, but they really are believers. But I can understand why people don't want me to warn them, because most people take the warning much too seriously. But a lot of times I'll warn people of something and they won't listen to me and they'll break their ankle on the day that I told them. Told them 3 years ahead of time, that day, and they break their ankle on that day. I don't know why the planets are specific to that body part, but they are. The point is this. There's a part of you that wants to breathe. There's a God part of you that wants to express itself, and it wants to express love, and it wants to expand itself. Now, if you've got rules against that, you'd better get with me and work on them. You'd better get with a psychologist and work on them. You'd better get with somebody to help you to liberate yourself and realize that it's totally normal and it's totally acceptable. Because then when those age 42 events come, they're not so disastrous. And the flip side of Uranus, people say, oh, it's the most exciting time I ever had. Oh, it's great. It's exciting. Great fun. See? So it's either one of the two. It's great fun and exciting and all that, or it's upsetting or coming out of my skin, et cetera, et cetera. The reason you say you're coming out of your skin is because it's insistent and you're really trying to push it down. And it's really coming back up and you're trying to push it down. That's what equals strokes, heart attacks, aneurysms. Something blows up inside. With Uranus, you either move forward and bend or you crack. You move forward or you crack, including the foundation outside your house. So it's that simple. So at age 21, we can all go back to 21. It's a hard age to examine because we're all so young and the parents are just starting to let go of control. So at age 21, it's understandable, a lot of the things that happen. I'm going to skip over the sevens for now because I can get into all kind of sub-discussions. At age 42, Uranus gets opposite itself. This is commonly known as the midlife crisis. It's a terrible term for it. A lot of people do just fine at age 41, 42, 43. A lot of people don't. Same reasons. But instead of coming from the solar nadir, the fourth house, it's now coming at you from the solar. It's not coming from the solar. It's coming from the Uranian seventh house. Claudia, forgive me. It's coming to you from the Uranian seventh house, the Uranian fourth house, the Uranian seventh house, the Uranian 10th house. When Uranus is opposite itself, like any planet, like Neptune is opposite Neptune in the USA's chart now. Seen any weird stuff in America lately? When Uranus is opposite Uranus, you start to ask yourself, am I free in my relationships? Most of us think about our marriage, but it's not just marriage. In all of my relationships, with my art easel, with my friends, with my marriage, with my girlfriend, with my job, am I able to be myself when I'm with another? And it's the status of a healthy personality when you're able to be yourself while you're with yourself, and you can be yourself when you're with another. So that's why we look at the critical stage of 42, where Uranus has gone from here to here when it's opposite itself. And if you have had some success and did okay at 21, or else you started to repair things through these 21 years, if you started to loosen up more, then the 42 won't be so bad. Now, what's so common with 42? Jump in the car with the guys, second childhood, let's get the shades on, let's get the motorcycle, let's go on Route 66 to Las Vegas. I mean, it's just so common that people want to do that. Now, the problem with Uranus is it's very common to blame the other. If she weren't so naggy, if she weren't so repressive, if she were better in the bedroom, if she were better in the kitchen, if he were better at this, if he were better at that, it's very common and tempting to blame the outside person for causing your repression. And that's why, as an astrologer, I have to listen very neutrally, but I know what to listen for. Are you giving me a story about somebody repressing you, or is it you been doing it to yourself? It's not hard to tell. Have you been doing it to yourself? Chuck and I have been working together for a long time. Chuck went through some very significant Uranian times a couple of years ago, and I walked him through them, and they were no picnic, and they were some intense things. And he had to think about his relationships with people, but Chuck went through them, and he started to liberate himself, and he did it very professionally. He did it very nicely, and now he's going through Uranus hitting 7 planets in Leo. It's squaring 7 planets in Leo, and he's doing fine. He's doing fine because he prepared for it. He's going fine because he didn't use his previous Uranus transit to blame mom, to blame dad, to blame ex-wife. He put the blame where it should have been, but he also owned what he needed to own, and he liberated himself. He's been doing it in a healthy fashion. So when Uranus hits you, you're going to have some bumps. And when Uranus hits you, you're going to have chaos. It's just the planet of chaos. And things will not settle down because you want them to settle down. They're not going to settle down. It's not what Uranus does. Uranus causes craziness and uproar. So at age 42, a lot of people mistake it for they want to return. It's their second childhood. And that the essence of the Uranus opposite Uranus, am I living the life that's really Rick? And if I'm not, it's real common for me to want to blame the things that have stopped me, or they didn't let me go to school, or I wasn't enough money, or blah, 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 blah. Instead of being healthy and saying, well, I sat on this one, I blew that opportunity, and I wasn't reacting to my own needs, etc. And that's using a Uranus trip wisely, because you start to realize that I had these difficulties, had these problems, but I did not do a good job of allowing myself to be free. So a typical age 42 that's used correctly, here's the one that's incorrect. I've told you this before. The one where the wife comes down the steps in the morning and she sees a note, and her husband's 42. She sees a note on the counter that says, honey, I just can't take it anymore. Goodbye. I love you. Please forgive me. That's a guy using it the wrong way. She ain't the problem. He's going to take the problems with him. And I've already told you about the man in Pittsburgh years ago. I'll repeat it because it's so outrageous. This lady called me once, this was 20 years ago, to come please sit with her husband. He was young. I think he was 42, and they had a couple young babies. And he wanted to leave the family. She didn't want him to leave. It's her and the little babies. He wanted to go to Las Vegas, and he wanted to take, this is his words, he wanted to get some shiny sunglasses and become a state trooper. He watched too many cop shows. And I went there and I talked to him, and I'm mumbling to myself, lady, you're better off if you let him go. But I didn't say that. I said, you don't want to leave your little boy and girl here to grow up by themselves just because you want to go play cops. I'm not going to tell you what a sun sign is. You could probably guess. He went and he abandoned the family. He went and became a state trooper in Nevada. I lost track of him, and I really don't care. But she's better off without him. But that just shows you how powerful this force is. And we have a very badly placed Uranus in our government's chart. In our birth chart of 1776, we have a wildly placed Uranus in our natal chart. And we didn't even know where Uranus was till after the country was started. But ours is very infantile. It's very wild. Our Uranus in our chart indicates a disposable society. We don't want to deal with anything that's important. So we have trouble with Uranus. So by the age of 42, you should be getting a sense of what it is that Rick is doing or not doing that's helping him be himself. And you can tell this by the stressors in your body. Your body will tell you what's wrong. And it will specifically tell you in certain areas what is wrong. Did you have a question, Linda? You need to unmute yourself. You need to unmute.
I had a bug.
Oh, you had a bug.
Grabbed a bug out of here.
Okay, you had a Uranus bug on your arm. Okay. All right. Now, can any of you identify with stressors that hit you pretty strongly when you're 42? Now, when I hit 42, I was released to travel the United States, to travel all over Canada and install software and teach people and travel all around the two countries. So it was an exciting, liberating time for me. And I got to do some really magical, neat things over the internet. Uranus has a lot to do with high tech and with the internet. They're very common that you will be doing your things through that because Uranus rules things like lightning and fast energy and speed of light and things happening quickly. But we all go back to the early days of Fred Rogers and Fred saying, "There's nobody just like you." And that's a really sincere, significant statement, not coming from a corny old preacher. He's saying to the kids, there is nobody just like you. You really are special. And he said in such a healthy way. We hope that the kids pick that up. So what happens at 42? What should happen at 42 is you need to adjust your life and all the relationships that you're in. If you're not relating properly, you need to adjust them so that you start winning and letting them win, and you win in proportion that makes sense, not an idiotic, greedy, selfish way. So you see, the planets themselves are very altruistic. They really want what's best for you, and they really do have a mindset of understanding what the other planets need. The problem we get into is when we live for years of repressing a certain energy. Alexis says you're turning 40. Okay. Come on in, Kathy. Okay, in Alexis's case, we don't need to really talk. I just need to tell you. At age 40 now, if you've been having an okay time all of your life, releasing yourself, letting yourself go on vacation, letting yourself color outside the lines, letting yourself waste a little bit of money, letting yourself be a little wild. You don't have to be crazy. You won't have too tough of a time. But if you've been really rigidly blocking and holding on to yourself, then you just got yourself a 2-year warning. Because you got 2 years of coming on this show and hearing about this 2 years before it gets tight. And an astrologer can tell you the exact day that the Uranus will be opposite itself. So that's how she works. Now, the next stage is not as important. And the reason it's not as important is because, frankly, we become more dull. We just become more dull as we age. We're not as lively as we are when we're 42 and 21. So when we get to age 63, and I'm seeing so many people now, 63, I'm seeing so many people now, 65, 66, 64. I'm getting so many people in this range that are liberating themselves. This is very complex for me to try to figure out why. It's not really happening when they're 63. It's happening a little bit later. And I think that one of the reasons for that is this. Uranus is now in the sign of Taurus. It's been in Taurus for about 5 years out of 7. Taurus is very thick. It's like molasses. You can picture an electric rod, stick it in molasses, and then wait a while till the electricity comes out the other end. That's just natural for Taurus. Taurus is a lovely sign, a wonderful sign, but Taurus can't stand things happening fast. They just can't do it. They can't deal with it. So I've noticed very commonly when Uranus hits a Taurus in a certain way and nothing happens, and I say, "You sure?" They go, "Nothing." And 2 years later, they go, "Ah!" I say, "Oh, there it is." It's like a delayed reaction. So I think that's one of the reasons. And I cannot tell you how many people in the past couple months, 4 or 5 months, have come to me around age 64, 65, and they're just liberating everything. They're getting divorced, they're buying houses, they're buying trailers, they're going on their bucket list trip. They're just doing their thing. So I think that's a lot of what's happening is the collectivism has been slowed down being in Taurus. Now wait and see. Know your zodiac, because in a couple of years, after 7 years in Taurus, Uranus is going to go into Gemini. Ooh. What do you think is going to happen when Uranus gets into flighty Gemini, the most conductive sign that there is? You're going to just have all hell's fire broke loose. You think the internet's fast now? Wait till it gets into Gemini. We're going to have internets on top of internets. The information is going to fly so quickly, we're not even going to know what to do with it. We're going to have holograms popping up in the middle of our living rooms. So, at age 63, it's very commonly known as the secondary midlife crisis or the minor midlife crisis. By that time, it's not really a crisis because by the time you're 63, you usually say live it, deal with it, just you know who you are, and you're not going to change that much. But it's very common that becomes the bucket list time at age 63, 62, 63, 64. So you start making a list of all the things that you didn't do. And one of the problems that happens in the mid 60s is you can't do them because you're starting to get physically restrained. That's a sad part of it. But a lot of people that are healthy get up and go, and they want to go do things at 63. So it's again the same story, but this time Uranus is coming from the top. Think about this. Watch this, Charlie. Chuck. This time, instead of Uranus hitting Uranus at age 21 from the bottom or coming across from age 42, it's now coming from the closing square. Here's the closing square. And what we're referring to is Uranus opening, opposite, closing, and closed, finishing and starting anew. So 84 is a big deal. 63 is a big deal. So when the one comes at the top, that's why the one at age 63, 64, 65, it becomes opportunity, but from above. I must say I missed that word earlier. Let me backtrack. One of the words you never hear about Aquarius or Uranus is opportunity. The zodiac is so heavily leaning towards Jupiter. Jupiter loves and solves all things, and is a bunch of BS. Uranus has a lot to do with being a planet of opportunity. Uranus will hit you and things will change like that. Wow, how'd that happen? Whew. It's always sudden, always sudden. Did you meet him overnight? Sudden. Did your life change overnight? Sudden. So when you're 63, you may start getting all these offers from these other companies because by 63, you probably have learned to release yourself. You probably have grown up enough by 63 that you've learned to not stop yourself as much. So we don't have as many people at 63 and 64 with arthritic problems as we do at 42. And arthritises are really any of the arthritises, they're real telling signs when you're dealing with Uranus or you're dealing with Saturn, because you're seeing how rigid is the body. A rigid body is nothing more than the child makes a request and the adult says no. The child makes the request. The adult says, I'm looking at everything, looking it over, and I don't think so. No ice cream, no playground, no. And the child gets depressed. The healthy Uranus, the child wants to do it. The adult says, yeah, let's go to the playground. Now, if the child wants to go to the playground all day, every day, then you got a problem. So the one at 63 is your second chance of getting age 42 correct. That's your second chance of getting yourself liberated. And that's why a lot of times people at 63, 64, 65 start living vicariously through their last will that they're leaving, through the books that they're writing, through their odysseys that they've had. They start thinking not so much about me, but what am I leaving behind for my children, my grandchildren? So 63 is a very misunderstood one. Usually people are very, very set in their ways by then, which is why 63 is so dangerous of a time medically. It's very, very dangerous because you just can't fathom the fact that some powerful cosmic force is still pumping through you, and it is. It doesn't care how old you are. These forces are powerful. So when you get along up till age 84 and you start to see the Uranus close in on itself and it starts to return, it's gone through all the 12 houses of life. It's been through the opening of the opposition. It's been through the closing. It's now closing, completing its cycle. These planets have a real natural intelligence about them. They know when they're completing their cycle. The GOP is going through a Uranus return now. You would think that they would gather some intelligence, but they're so blown up from their recent Neptune return, turned them to mush. There's nothing there to work with. If they had handled their Uranus return properly in age 2018, in the year 2018, then the GOP would be reborn and would be dangerous and it would be hell on wheels. But they're not. They've just become an aberration of themselves. Okay. So at age 84, what happens if you're still lucid and you get your faculties about you, you start to feel like, am I done? You start to feel like I'm done. You saw it with Pope John Paul II, who left the Vatican right when his Uranus return was exact. You saw it with Ram Dass a couple of years after his Uranus return. You saw it with David Hawkins when he had written 8 books and he says, I'm all done. And he was 84. He said, I'll write one more. So he wrote one more to finally bring his series of 9 books all together. You saw it with Carl Jung in his last 3 years of life, 81 through 84. All Carl Jung wanted to do was be left alone and doing his astrology. He just wanted to do people's charts and start to learn from that. So the one in 84 can be miraculous. It can be some of the most powerful stuff that's ever been done in terms of creativity, if the person is lucid enough to be able to handle it. So you'll also see that with bodies like governments. You'll see that with buildings. Anything that's 84 years of age is due for a complete overhaul. Complete overhaul.
Hey, Rick,
Yeah.
did you say a minute ago when you were talking through things, did you say Carl Jung?
Yes.
Could you repeat that? I just wanted to make sure I understood it.
When Carl Jung got to his early 80s, he felt so complete. Okay. And this is a man who did not say to you, the meaning of that dream is sort of like this. He told you the meaning of that dream is this.
Yeah.
This is what it didn't mean that. This is what it meant. This is a man so sure of himself, so powerful. In his latter years, he did two things. He wanted to do nothing but astrology. He didn't want to debate with other people's intellectual thoughts because he knew the direct vision of the archetypes was astrological. The second thing he did, when he was a child, the family had a decaying ceramic silo on the property. And he would go into that silo. It's like a little fort as a little kid. And he would play with the mud and the rocks and he would build stuff. And he wanted to recover. And he wondered why, when you're little and you have that blissful experience when you're little of you got all day to play. You could play all day long. Where does that go when you're 80, when you're 70, when you're 60? We sure don't have it. So he wanted to recover that. So he went back inside there in the mud and with the rocks and he played with them. He wanted to recover that feeling. So 84, for a lot of people, I know I coached your mother through 84, and your mother was absolutely had no idea what I was talking about. I was trying to get her to recover her 84th year and to see this cycle within a cycle. She didn't see it. So she's a Virgo, and it's tough for some people to see it. In future generations, you're going to see more and more people do it. Your mother didn't see it because she was mainly a Virgo, and she was head to the grindstone and get your work done. Okay, well, if you're a creative being, 84 can be marvelous time with your greatest memoirs or your greatest breakthroughs, such as Jung did. But the difficulty with 84 is usually by then you're so physically handicapped. So those are the stories of the four age 21s in astrology, and you'll notice when you get into subcycles that when you are 21, when you are 21 and Uranus is opposite itself, Saturn, or let's see here. When you're at age 28, when you're at age 42, Saturn is opposite Saturn while Uranus is opposite Uranus. So the little 7-year cycles, which are subsets of the 21, are also, Saturn is 7 years per 2 signs. So that's one reason that these cycles can get confusing, because Saturn and Uranus have differing natures and they have different times. So for every quadrant or 21 years of Uranus, you have you have 7 cycles of Saturn. So it can be confusing, and that's why you have to look at your planets carefully to see. So when you go back through your life tonight, and when you go back through your family and you listen and you analyze, look at the people around you you've grown up with and start to see the pillars of their life at 21, at 42, at 63, and maybe it's 84. And you'll start to see really significant pillars in terms of how much we give honor to being ourselves. But see, in this country, we think we're independent, but we're not. In Europe, they're independent. I did a long essay on this years ago, investigating how free are we really. We're not nearly as independent as we think because we traded in for safety. We trade safety for independence. We think that being safe is the primary quality that you need, but safety kills independence. So let's have any questions you have tonight about your Saturn. If you want to get on the horn with me, Alexis, if you want to unmute yourself, go ahead. If you want to talk about being age 40, approaching 42, we can do that, or any of you with these cycles. You can go ahead.
I was gonna say, so maybe the 60s is hard because then you have your second Saturn return plus the Uranus.
You have the second Saturn return around age 58. That's correct. That is true. Sometimes you're getting to 58 and then along comes the 63. Usually the 58 is not that bad. It can be tough on your health, but usually in terms of Saturn, the first one is the butt kicker. Because if you don't have yourself in line for doing something practical to support yourself by 28, it's usually hard to readjust. But by age 40, you should be feeling already, you're 2 years away from your Uranus opposition to Uranus. You should be feeling already a lot of questions in your mind for your relationships. Is he or she allowing me to be myself? Am I going through the same repetitive patterns of being over compromising in my relationships? Your whole self is asking questions about how can I be in a relationship but be free at the same time, and they're doable, and that's the question that has to be solved. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah, career-wise as well, for sure.
What's going on in the career?
I thought it's just the pandemic that I can't really go back to the regular 9 to 5 anymore, but this also makes sense.
No, it's not. It's not the pandemic. What is your sun sign, may I ask?
Virgo.
Okay, Virgo. 90% of my questions are for Virgos. The other 10% are with others. Almost all my charts are Virgo women. Okay. And I'll strongly recommend that you go to my YouTube page and type in Rick DiClemente Virgo, and you will see a 90-minute video that I chopped down to 30 minutes. And it's all about overcoming Virgo perfectionism. So that video will help you greatly if you've got trouble with the Virgo that's constantly nagging at you to be productive, be productive, be productive.
Rick, I have a question when you're done.
Yes, Chuck.
So why is it that in general, why do you say that 90% of your questions are related to Virgo?
Virgo is such it's just such a.
And by the way, the only reason I say that is that I've had a lot of Virgo women around me in my life.
That's right. Yeah, and you have your Virgo and your parents very strongly with your mom and dad. And Virgo energy is all about being right and getting done, being professional, do it right, don't do it wrong. And push your feelings down. Don't let your feelings get in the way. You do the job right. So it's a very tough question, not because of sun sign in Virgo, because a lot of people have sub-Virgo planets in their chart. And Virgo planets can raise hell with you. The number one, without a doubt, the number one physical ailment in all of astrology is Virgo planets and people with lower GI problems. Very, very common. And it's about not allowing themselves to be. They won't let things flow. The conveyor belt's coming by. Stop it. Found something wrong. Got to fix it. Let it go. Let it go.
So they're not responding to the flow of the energy in life. They're trying to.
They're not able to because they're completely overwhelmed with finding what's wrong and fixing it. And Virgos are they're just so good at fixing things. But the definition is faulty because you're saying everything that's sent your way has got something broken.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, I
But
understand that.
know, if you listen to the Virgos and you listen to them talk, they're going to find things that are broken that they got to fix, and they feel like a bum if they don't do it. So it's a tough, tough energy. Marvelous people, very pure, very caring, but they've got to learn through that age 42. They've got to learn to start letting themselves have fun, start to enjoy themselves. In the last 10 years, a lot of Virgos have been doing better and better, but that's because Neptune has been in the opposite sign. Neptune has been in Pisces opposing Virgo, and Neptune is the opposite voice of Virgo. It's the voice of let it be, relax, etc. So, with your case, Chuck, and with Uranus hitting so many planets of yours, it's going to go hit one and then the other. It's going to hit 6 planets in a row. You're going to have 6 distinct stories. When you look at it all, you're going to see one big Uranian arcage to the whole thing. But that's why you're going through so much of this. I think I want to try this. I think I want to try this. And then you're looking around like this because you're used to somebody telling you, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. And you're going to keep looking around seeing there's nobody there. There's nobody stopping me, just me. Just keep on doing it. And that's why I've been telling you, as Uranus is only on your first planet, it's got 6 more to go. I've been telling you it's time to go. It's time to put the foot down and go. Because Uranus has a very honest, pro-human, humanitarian side to it. It just loves people and it loves to do things for people. Did you have a question, Linda?
No, I looked at that cycle and it explains everything.
Oh, yeah?
At age 21, I graduated from college and married my first bad person. And
Suddenly?
at what?
Did you do it suddenly?
It was like, yeah.
Suddenly, Uranus.
Yeah. And then on the next go round, I was in graduate school and sort of stuck. Should have been writing my dissertation and wasn't. And I, ended up leaving a relationship that maybe would have been better for me to stay in if I had taken accountability for my own stuckness. And
That's exactly right. But eventually you did, and you learned that lesson late, but eventually you did, and it paid off very well.
Right before the 63. I mean, it was right, I was like 61 or 62, and I got it. So that Uranus return wasn't, it was traumatic in the sense that I had to change a lot of things in my life.
This is the kind of thing we should be learning in 2nd grade and 3rd grade and 4th grade and all through school. These natural cycles. And you can do it without the woo-woo, and you can do it without the crazy stuff. They're just natural cycles. But boy, try to introduce that into the public school system.
Especially, I think about, when I was in my 40s, it was like, I was just generally, I didn't know where I was going to go after graduate school.
Mhm.
And I didn't know how to finish my dissertation. And relationships were always unsatisfying, and some of it was because of the other person having drinking problems or what have you, but a lot of it was just instead of sort of looking at
There-
myself,
There's something that's natural to Libra that caused that, I believe. It's natural to Libra. I think around age 42 at the midlife, Libras who have grown up with this incredible belief that they're the sign of the partner and they got to have a partner, around 42, they start to realize that they don't. And that causes chaos in their mind because they built all their fortresses with all these pillars based around partnership. And all of a sudden they don't need them as much. Then they don't know what to do about it. And they start thinking it's them, something's wrong with them. It's not. You look at Libras in their 60s and they just don't care. They're
exactly.
different. They're not cold, but they just don't need a partner.
I would have to give up my remote if I had a partner.
You and Shelby.
Me and Shelby,
How'd you do, John? How'd you do at 21 and 42?
I went, let's go back to when I was 14. When I was 14, I entered a prep school, the high school, which was really a seminary. I just thought I was.
That's because Saturn was opposite Saturn.
So at 21, I left that seminary situation. When I was really rebellious.
Because Saturn put you in there, and 21, and Uranus got you out.
That's right. This all works out. I see so many things, like at age 56, something very dramatic happened to me, and then 57, even more dramatic. But that was a big change in my life, which you know about. And another interesting thing, my father, when he was 83, we had a birthday party. He told me, I'm not going to be here for my next birthday. At that time, I was in my 40s. I should have had a nice talk with my father to find out what you're talking about.
He was telling you that he knew it. He was done. He was just done.
Right. Well,
Right.
84. That really, you're going through this. So, but he was done.
Well, that's really true. And when you're done, that doesn't mean that you have to close your books up. You can still keep pushing. Some people do. But what happens at 84 is you're just done, and the universe quits bugging you. Okay. The planetary energies, they quit bugging you. We are not much more than one Uranus cycle. As humans, we're mostly a one Uranus cycle entity at the moment. That may change because mostly people get to 84 and that's pretty much it. But I think you've learned tonight, I hope you have, to be able to look at your in-laws, to look at your nieces, nephews, and to watch these cycles and understand from them. The one at 21 is family. The one at 63 is social. It's social. My place in society. The one at 42 is relationship. What happened to you, Claudia, when you're 42?
I started dating this guy and I felt very much like I was not free. And it was really it was I had to break away from him.
Well, then that's why that lesson came to you.
Yeah. It
And
was
that
a big time.
That was the whole theme of that lesson.
Yeah. It was.
And that was actually break free or else.
I've never been the same since. It was a big moment. And
Well,
it took me about a year to realize that. But it was.
Well, you're one pleasant, very liberated woman now. That's for sure.
Well, this is always one of my favorite topics. Uranus is the one thing that the more I learn about Uranus, the more I love Uranus. And I used to be scared.
It's a wonderful Uranus. Planet. There's nothing to be afraid of.
Yeah.
It does not know what it's going to do until it's exact. It doesn't even know. It doesn't know the night before, but it has so much wisdom. It hits you with this shocking lightning bolt on the day it's exact, and you go, what the hell was that? And then you realize how brilliant it is.
Mhm.
It really is a brilliant planet. I got to go to South America for 4.5 months and get indentured. What? I mean, it just does crazy stuff to you. My friend was 42 and he went to the Himalayas and spent about 10 years helping the people put in solar panel energy.
Wow.
The greatest things in his life, and he was Aquarian. Don't be narrow. When Uranus is on you, it'll usually come to you through an Aquarian personality. When Saturn is on you, it'll usually come to you through a Capricorn in your life. Debbie, any questions? Yeah, I can't help but watch you with your headphones. You look like you're flying an airplane. Let's go, Debbie. Got any questions?
No, but I find it very interesting because at 42, I was just right on the precipice to actually going and doing what I do public. So the very next year, I started doing it for the public. And then now I'm finding I'm going to be 70. So here's the 7 years, in January, I'm going to be 70. So here's the 7 years after 63, and it's happening again.
Yes.
Where I'm, starting to blossom and do again for the public.
You are the one that happened at 42. The reason 42 hits you, when Uranus gets to opposite itself, it's not only going through the Uranian opposition to Uranus, but the seventh house is not just about relationships. It's very much about your personage that you're going to play in the public. What's your new personage going to be in the public? Are you going to become a new counselor? Are you going to put out a new shingle? Are you going to put out a new persona? Okay?
Question.
Yes, John.
What is the expression 7-year itch? Where do you think that
That's
comes
all because of Saturn.
from?
Every year Saturn squares itself, then it's opposite itself at 14, then 21, then 28. In astrology, things test themselves during the opening square. So if you are starting a job, watch this. If you're starting a job, 90 days later, the sun is here. You got the opening square. We'll put you on a 90-day trial. Sun is squared to the sun. The opening square of any cycle is when that square is being tested for its weakness. If it is Uranus, it happens at age 21. 21 versus the birth. So if it is Mars goes around every 2 years. Just do the math with all these. When the opening square of anything happens, it's being tested in terms of that energy. Uranus does it at age 21. Pluto does it around age 30 something. They square each other. The planets that don't go on a perfect circle, you can't say these things about. But I think you've learned tonight. And where are you, Susan?
I'm still in Ravenna. I didn't have my video on because I was driving until now. I just got back to my RV.
You are where?
I'm in Ravenna.
Ravenna.
It's a state park.
Ohio?
Yeah, that's Ohio. It's not far from the border of Pennsylvania, really.
Oh, okay. So you're keeping the gas mileage down. So
Right.
what happened to you, Susan, when you were 42?
At 40, I switched my job to another school district, because I had gotten trapped into a middle school. I got hired at the first district for high school, and then I got bumped. And I couldn't take anymore. So I wound up searching, but that was 40, not 42.
Okay,
There isn't
sometimes
anything I
it's a
can
little
think of
early.
at 42. Yeah.
What
'cause
happened at
all
what
of
happened
these
at what happened at 21?
at 23, I got married real sudden like. 21 was I suddenly ran off to Europe with a one-way ticket and a Eurail pass.
Now that's fun. Now that is Uranus. Going to Europe with a Eurail pass. Okay, I think we're going to end the evening on that. Unless it looks like Erica's got some good for us. What'd you have happen, Erica?
Well, I had my Uranus square at the age 18.
I don't think so.
I think I did.
Well, you probably had Uranus hitting some planets, but not Uranus. What happened at 21?
Not as much as 18. At 18, I broke out of the nest, very conservative home, and I became a hippie. I left Michigan and I moved to New York City to study acting and pursue
Oh my God, is that Uranus?
design, and I just
Oh, in your case, Uranus.
never went back. I
Uranus hit-
came home a few times, but then I just ended up going back. You can't put, once Pandora opens the box, you can't put everything back in
Yeah,
again.
Uranus was probably hitting some of your planets at 18 and then on through 21. So these things are not rigidly true, but they're basically true if you watch them. Now, what's something neat? We're going to end the show now. Something neat for you and the YouTubers who are watching. Don't just do this with people. Do this with your business. Do this with a car. Do this with an institution. Watch how at 21, boy, this interface, boy, this front of our store is so boring. Let's get a new logo. Let's put new lights in. Let's open. So it's that theme. You'll see it operating everywhere. Now, next week, we're going to go into a review of the houses, because I have a whole new way of looking at that houses, no matter what house system you have. And then on the 19th, let me get it straight. Deneen Joyner has a fantastic show coming up for us. She's been with us before. She is the Pittsburgh shaman. She's just terrific. It's going to be all about karmic sexual issues. How about that? Karmic sexual traumas. She's going to get into talking about surviving that stuff, getting past traumas. She's a trauma expert. She's terrific. Now, let me go back to your question so I don't miss you. Go ahead, Erica.
Well, I think the reason why I had my my Uranus squared 18 is because Uranus retrograded so much around the time I was born. Are you sure? I mean, I looked at the ephemeris.
Hold on one moment, please. We'll say goodnight to our YouTubers and I'll get right to that. Thank you, YouTubers.